What an incredible honor and privilege I have today to present this beautiful wedding gown to you. If you've been watching some of the Fashion Anatomy episodes, you'll know that many of these dresses came from the Geneva collection. Geneva was married in 1945 to her sweetheart Michael. Michael was in the Navy and was in World War II. She waited 3 years for him to come home, which he did. I'm thrilled to be able to show you this beautiful gown. It's quite fragile and a bit too small for this dress form, so I'm only showing you the front on the form because it doesn't close up the back. We'll take a good look at it at the table, and then I have some photographs and short films of it hanging so you can see how it's constructed. Let's begin. This is Geneva. She's 23 years old, and this is her official wedding portrait. You can see the sections sewn into the center back here. And also at the side back, there is a section added to make the skirt. The underdress has cording at the very bottom of the hem, and you can see through the dress the wide facing. And you can see how much wider the facing is at the back, and also the panels to make the shape of the skirt. I don't see any evidence of bustling. This is our bodice, and to create the dartage, they've taken little tiny darts here. 9 darts up the side to create the bust. And we have tiny piping, 1/8 inch piping. There are no gathers at the center front waist, which is a wonderful thing because it keeps the waist flat. And all the gathers are on the sides and to the back. So we'll go back to the front in a moment. The buttons are heavy. They're covered with a satin, and the rest is a chiffon, but it's a kind of a loosely woven chiffon, and it seems rather stiff. It could be because of the age and dust. It's clearly very, very dusty. Let's count the buttons. There are 40 buttons, so this dress took a little bit of time to get into because these are not elastic. They're the same chiffon. This facing is sewn by hand. It is not sewn on the machine. There's a facing here, and I see tiny, tiny machine stitches. Let's see if I can count those. There are about 24 stitches per inch right here. This piece was sewn on, and as you can see, the buttons, some of them are hooked together. This is silk thread, definitely silk thread, which is good because cotton probably would have fallen apart. Unfortunately, this is starting to really show deterioration. So it has this little flounce, this little ruffle right on the hips that would make it stand out. This is the tiniest little rolled hem I've ever seen. It looks like it was actually done by hand. So instead of a French seam going down the side, it's about a 1/16 of an inch rolled hem. This dress took a lot of time to make. Yes, this seam, the side seams of the skirt, are sewn by hand, and they're tiny little rolled hems. Oh my gracious. This is a close-up of the seam, all hand-stitched. The amount of time spent on this dress. Let's see what else is going on. It's really pretty fragile. Now, these are machine stitches, and they're overcast by hand. So this is the side seam going under the arm. It's probably a 3/8 inch, and then the armholes were sewn and covered with bias by hand, and they were sewn on the machine. The shoulder seam is machine stitched, and then tiny, tiny rolled over by hand. The neckline under the lace is just cut and then hand applied with a tiny little stitch going around and around and around like you would a rolled hem. Oh my gracious, this really was a time-consuming project. The sleeves are gathered. This is the back of the sleeve. You can see it's gathered all the way down, and then it has, they're like tucks all the way down. 10 buttons and loops, and of course the lace. You can see the little tucks on the loop side. It has tiny tucks here and larger tucks here. Let's look at the other sleeve. Yeah, each sleeve is slightly different, which is understandable. I really think this was all done by hand. It's incredible. It's as if they sewed the lace about 1/8 of an inch up and then turned the raw fabric up and did a little overcast that would catch the silk and the edge of the lace, secure it, and also keep it from fraying. It's starting to really come apart under the arms. Now, I'm kind of surprised at how long the waist is. She was about 5'6" or 7, is my understanding. Let's see how long this waist is. Because it looks super long, but in the photograph, it might be a little bit long. This might be the waist, a little bit longer. Let's check. 17, that's about right. Such a beautiful neckline. It's just exquisite. Let's look at the hem. First of all, the seams, as you can see, are tiny little rolled seams. They really are less than 1/16 of an inch. They really are. And then the hem is turned up and stitched by hand. This is amazing. This piece is sewn on separately. So it's a piece of bias that was sewn onto the bottom of the hem, right sides together, flipped under and folded, and stitched, but with the tiniest of hand stitches. I am just amazed at the details. You can see that the threads have discolored, but this is all hand done. I don't see any machine stitching in here. This is truly a work of art. I have purchased an acid-free box to put it back into, but I hope this ends up going to a museum. The Penny Fox collection at Drexel University is a good place for clothes to go. This is the headpiece. This is a piece of elastic. From the photograph, you can see that it laid somewhat back and then the veil fell from here, but I do not have that piece. And it has tiny wires. The whole thing's wired. And it's lace. I don't know where the lace came from, but it is handmade lace. It is just exquisite. The underdress is made of silk satin back crepe. It has silk chiffon straps. This is raw. I don't know if perhaps it had something attached to it at some point or not. The seams are less than 1/4 of an inch. They were machine stitched, and then the edges were hand overcast. This edge, this is really amazing. This edge is all hand overcast. Look how tiny it is. And The front is so fascinating. There is no waist seam. I'll show you in a minute. There's a panel inside. The front has waist darts. The waist darts are 6 inches above the waist and just 2 inches below the waist. What is so very fascinating is that there are no side seams. A side seam would be right about here. This is almost an armhole princess. Not quite, but it's behind where the center of the body would be. And look at the shape that it has. So her side seam would be right about here. This goes behind the side seam area. So it hugs the waist. It comes in at a V shape, slight V, hugs the waist, and then goes back out to the hips. Absolutely exquisite. It has a lapped zipper. The zipper is 16 inches, but keep in mind that her neck is up here. So if it had gone all the way to the base of the neck, it'd be about 21 or 2 inches. It's a metal zipper that has clearly discolored. You can see little stitches in here. So I think perhaps the outer dress was tacked to the underneath dress at one point. It was stitched with silk thread. And you can see that the seam allowances were clipped and shaved and then hand overcast. The thread that's discolored was probably cotton thread. The silk thread is the same color. And this is a little panel that I found inside the dress. It's like a little apron that's hand stitched across the waistline. This is to give the skirt of the dress a little more body and allow the dress not to cling as much as it might. It's 13.5 inches across the top, which would mean it would go completely to her side seams. And then the bottom panel is about 17. And this is a strip of silk organza that's been used to wrap the edge all the way around, sewn by machine, and then hand stitched underneath. Incredible piece of work. The neckline was faced with bias silk organza, stitched on the machine first, and then the edge was turned under and stitched by hand. I find this interesting that there's no finishing here. Now, it looks like it might have been turned under, so maybe the threads just wore out. I see threads here, so maybe over time it just wore out. But this is very interesting, that there's nothing on either side on the outside, and maybe it was just cut. You know, a wedding dress is worn one day, and any stitching probably would have shown through. Certainly so much handwork. This is hand overcast, the edge of this. Normally nowadays we put the lap on the other side, so I found this to be pretty interesting. There's a hook and a beautiful thread eye. The hem has cording. It's about 1/4 inch cording. And it has a facing. The body of the skirt is not lined, which is probably why they used that apron to give more modesty, because if the dress clung to her when she walked or moved, it wouldn't be as modest. So it's a different color, so I tend to think perhaps it has rayon in it. I don't know without testing it, which I'm not going to do. It has seam tape up here that's machine stitched, but look how gathered looking that is. Now this is the front and the facing, which gives nice weight, and also if the dress turns up you see the beautiful fabric. It's 9 inches. If we go all the way to the back of the dress, here's the back. You can see the shape of the panels, and again, this is the selvage right here and here. and it's all hand overcast. Oh, looky here. H. Owner Edelman, Gowns, Children's Clothes, Paris, New York. This probably was made in Paris. How beautiful. The facing for the skirt at center back is 32 inches. I'm so grateful to be able to see these and study them. I'm so grateful to Geneva's family for loaning me this dress. Hopefully it will be in a museum someday. It's certainly worthy of that. Thank you for joining me today, and see you next time.